A very good evening to you all, or maybe a good afternoon or a good morning, depending on when you're watching from. We are back live with stage 2 of the Vuelta a San Juan in Argentina. There are lots of riders making their debut at their race this year, but there's also a man alongside me making his debut as a commentator live. Many of you will recognise this man's voice. It is John Chocolate Voice Bevan, who's given you, should I say, the highlights from the Tour Down Under for the last few years, and very recently, just last week, finishing on Sunday, and now he's alongside me to commentate on today's second stage. So welcome along, John.
Thank you very much for having me.
We're going to crack on with live coverage as soon as we possibly can, because we have in the region of 37 kilometres to go. But firstly, we're going to take a very quick look back at what happened on yesterday's first stage of the race. As expected, it did finish up in a big bunch sprint. The big teams did their lead-outs, but did them slightly too early, leaving their leaders and sprinters out in the wind just slightly too far before the finish. Here you can see De Koning quick-step with one man left in front of Hodge. He launched his sprint with just over 200 metres to go with Peter Sagan on his wheel. Fernando Gaviria struggling to hold the wheel of Sagan in third place at this point, but as they went past 100 metres to go, they lost their energy, and coming round on the right-hand side of the road, the left-hand side of your screen, was Rudy Barbier, the Frenchman from Israel Startup Nation, should I say, making his debut at that team.
Yeah, but characterising the finish was this massive crash, actually caused by a fan on the side of the road, hitting the bars of Brandon McNulty and taking down a whole heap of riders. And one of the riders who would not start today would be Christophe Laporte of Cofidis. And looking at the damage there, I'm surprised it wasn't more.
Yeah, as John said, one of the riders affected there was Christophe Laporte, the sprinter from Cofidis, who didn't start today's stage despite finishing yesterday. He reportedly suffering from a fractured wrist. But this man was a very happy one. Rudy Barbier has ridden for the last couple of seasons for the Agi Désert La Mondiale squad in France. He's made that move over to the Israel Startup Nation, which are in their inaugural year, should I say, as a World Tour squad. And what a great way to start their season. This is stage 2, even flatter than yesterday's stage. Don't be fooled by the graphic on your screen right now, provided to us by the host broadcasters. Today's stage is around about 168 kilometres, as this profile shows. There is one third category climb along the route with just over 66 kilometres to go. A third category, it's just under 1 kilometre long at an average gradient of just over 1%, John. So yeah, it's not going to affect the sprinters too much.
A speed hump, to say the least, Dan. That's what we get for KOMs these days. They're over that already. We've got about just under 40 kilometres to go. A reasonably sized breakaway in the form of Iker Bararin, Robin Carpenter, Leandro Valdez, Daniel Juarez, Royne Navarro, Stephen Robinson Ruiz, Christopher Jurado and Francisco Montes in the breakaway so far.
Yep, they went soon after the flag dropped from kilometre 0, so I think we should now go over to live coverage to get updated on exactly what the time gap is and how far they have to go until the finish. Very flat between now and then, so we are expecting a big bunch sprint today. So let's catch up on what's happening right now.
And here we are, 32.4 kilometres to go. Lead of the breakaway down to 1 minute and 8. It's never really been above 3 minutes all day. De Koning quick-step on the front here. Peter Seri doing the work for his leader in the sprints, Jose Alvaro Hodge.
Yeah, he was on the front most of the day yesterday, was Peter Seri, the Belgian from De Koning quick-step. He was sharing that work with Pavel Poljanski, riding for Peter Sagan in the Bora Hansgrohe squad. We also saw a lot of Tom Bowley, the young Swiss rider from UAE Team Emirates, on the front. And there he is on his Colnago, number 52. Also riding on the front today, as you might expect, are the Israel Startup Nation. Now, we didn't see too much of them in terms of riding on the front, controlling things behind the breakaway yesterday. But they will be full of confidence, John, won't they, after that result of Barbier winning the stage yesterday. And given that today looks like likely to finish in a bunch sprint again, well, given the fast men that they've got here in this race, even though there's only 6-man teams, you would expect them to use that confidence to full effect.
Indeed, indeed. It's a fantastic start to the season for Israel Startup Nation, especially considering the size of the team and the fact that they've got riders out at the Tour Down Under just finishing, Andre Greipel, their main sprinter, Rudy Barbier. He'll be a man to watch now. He'll be a marked man as well in that leader's jersey.
Yeah, I was impressed with Andre Greipel at the Tour Down Under. Of course, last year was a season to forget for the big German sprinter. Took one win, I think, in the Tropicala Amisa Bongo at the beginning of the season. But beyond that, he didn't really take another win all year, which is unheard of, really, for Greipel. Normally takes at least a few wins each and every season. I think many people had written him off after the 2019 season. But given how he was looking at the Tour Down Under, where he never quite got his positioning perfect, I thought he looked very fast over the closing couple of 100 metres on a couple of the sprint stages, and I would not be at all surprised to see him take a couple of big wins again this year.
And he made the 26 rider breakaway on stage 6, won himself an intermediate sprint. It was looking pretty good, so I wouldn't put it past him to get back onto winning ways very soon.
Well, things starting to break up in that breakaway out front. John has already gone through the names of the riders up there, but we'll pick apart a couple of the riders that are up here. In the orange there, you can see Robin Carpenter, the American rider riding for Rally Cycling. A very accomplished rider, in fact, even when he's been over to some of the bigger races in Europe. And I know he's got a lot of fans that are probably watching our broadcast back over in the USA. Great to see him out front. The rider that you mentioned, John, riding for UAE Team Emirates now, that was a victim, really, of that spectator on the side of the road who ultimately caused that chain reaction and a massive pile-up with 3.4 Ks to go yesterday, was Brandon McNulty, another American rider. He has now stepped up to the World Tour, and we're expecting reasonably big things from him, certainly in the next couple of years, if not already this year, given his performances in 2019.
I remember him breaking on the scene at the Dubai Tour a few years ago, the infamous stage up to the Hatter Dam, where he almost pulled off that incredible victory. A very strong rider, and we're expecting big things to come from Brandon McNulty. Peloton here, just rolling along. We're anticipating a big bunch sprint, and it looks like the breakaway is starting to break up.
Yep, 2 riders out here alone now, ahead of the rest of the breakaway. There are quite a few riders in the break today from national teams, of which there are many here at the Vuelta San Juan. There you can see it's Jurado and Navarro from the Panama national team and the Peru national team, respectively. We also had another rider from the Peru national team, Ruiz. One from the Argentinian national squad, that being Francisco Montes. 2 from Agrupación. I'm sure you can tell. Agrupación Virgen de Fatima, they being Leonardo Valardes, and also Daniel Juarez, who incidentally, although 7 minutes and 3 seconds down in the overall classification, is now leading the intermediate sprints classification, courtesy of a few points that he took yesterday and another few points which he has amassed today from being in the breakaway.
Adam Bennett on YouTube says that I don't love that Orbea, Euskadi and Rally are in basically identical kits. 2 riders from the break featuring there, and it did confuse me to begin with. Euskadi Fundación, of course, coming back into to the fore. Many of you will remember the heyday of Euskadi Basque Country team, yeah, it's looking.
Well, you might not have heard yesterday, John, but Marty and I had a long discussion about the various team kits in the bunch this year and the amount of orange that we're seeing. There you can see, in fact, some of those Euskadi Basque Country jerseys look slightly different shades of orange, but I think that was just courtesy of the fact they were in different parts of the peloton. But you would have been asleep because you've been commentating and doing highlights all week of the Santos Tour Down Under, which has required you getting up at stupid o'clock in the morning to do that. So I'm sure you were asleep by the time Marty and I were commentating on stage 1 here yesterday. But it was a good one. Marty was particularly taken by the Bardiani team kit, which I think is one of the worst team kits I've seen in quite a few years. But each to their own.
It's quite the colour clash, isn't it? Purple and lime green.
I think Marty's been online to order himself a couple of team strips from Bardiani overnight, but we'll wait and see whether they come through and whether or not he wears them. Right, 59 seconds the gap between the breakaway rider here now on his own at the front and the rest of the peloton behind, so very much under control for the big sprinters teams. As we've mentioned, it's Bora Hansgrohe, De Koning Quickstep and the Israel Startup Nation doing the majority of the work. UAE Team Emirates also up there with Fernando Gaviria. I'll be interested to see how Fernando Gaviria gets on today, John. Yesterday I was kind of bigging him up, saying that he wasn't his best in 2019 and he would be determined to make amends in the 2020 season in the sprints. But to me, he didn't look that strong in the sprint yesterday. When Hodge made his move, Sagan was glued to his wheel, and just behind them both was Fernando Gaviria, but he looked to me to be struggling to hold the wheel. It was a very, very fast sprint yesterday. Just the fact that they were sat down in the last 100 metres or so, to me, signalled the fact that it was so fast, their cadence was too high to be able to stand up out of the saddle and sprint.
Well, if you've ever ridden in 53.11 and spun out 53.11, then you'll know exactly how fast those riders were going. But Gaviria, he's moved to UAE Team Emirates, and since joining from De Koning Quickstep, and could it be a case that he needs to form the team around him, the lead out around him, resources coming also freely for De Koning Quickstep? It seems no matter what sprinter joins that team, they're gifted almost instant success with the riches and talent they've got in the lead out capacity. And for Gaviria, it's just a case of finding his rhythm again, as it is with sprinters. Much of it is about form, I suppose. Not knowing myself, but...
Well, neither do I, John. Robin Carpenter, the man we were talking about a few moments ago of rally cycling on those felt bicycles this year, has just made his way up to the lone leader, which was Christopher Robin Jurado of the Panama national team. Incidentally, Jurado is a two-time national champion of Panama and the reigning national time trial champion. I'm sure that event must be coming up soon for the Panama nationals and riders. But a very good rider, and we can see that to good effect today. He broke away from the breakaway just a few moments ago, found himself solo, but Robin Carpenter has now made his way up to Jurado to make two riders at the front, with the rest of the breakaway now trailing behind. Not too far behind though, John, are they? Should be able to make this junction fairly quickly if they set to it and all work equally at the front.
You mentioned the wind earlier, Dan. Is that going to play a factor in today's finale?
Well, it's a much milder wind than it was yesterday when we were watching, where we could see the flags on the side of the road blowing pretty significantly. And in fact, it was enough to see the bunch split over that dam with around about 30 kilometres still remaining. Today, it's kind of a cross headwind as they head back into Pocito for the finish today, but it's only around 6 knots, so not likely to affect the outcome of the race today.
The telling factor is often the shape of the peloton in this situation. As you can see, everybody together taking shelter. In the event of a crosswind, you'll often see them fanning out on the side of the road to form echelons and make the most of the slipstreaming effect. You can see UAE Team Emirates, Tom Bowley on the front now, working hard for Fernando Gaviria. Also got Israel Startup Nation and De Koning Quickstep never too far away. As we can see, the chase group, Velardes, Navarro and Ruiz, two Peruvians, and they will be wanting to stay out for as long as possible. It's a fantastic opportunity for some of these riders to be in a top event like the Vuelta San Juan, and they'll be making the most of it.
Yeah, we mentioned that yesterday, that these types of events where you get a number of World Tour squads, some pro-continental teams and also some continental squads, which are the third division of cycling's professional ranks, as well as some national teams as well. It's the perfect opportunity for the riders that are in those lower division teams to impress in front of the best teams and riders in the world. Yesterday, in fact, we saw a couple of lower level riders get up there in the sprint. I mean, Manuel Belletti is a quality sprinter who's had some decent results over the years. He rides for Androni Giocattoli, which is basically a second division squad from Italy. He took second place on the day. And I think Rudy Barbier also stepped up to the mark yesterday. I think given the lineup of sprinters we've got in this race, he and probably even his team wouldn't have expected him to take the win. So what a great start they got off to. This year they are on Factor bikes, and incidentally, if you would like to see the Factor bike of Andre Greipel, our man from the tech channel John Cannings was on the ground at the Tour Down Under, and you can find out all about that bike over on GCN Tech if you would like to know more. And apparently he's saying it's the best bike he's ever ridden.
Just saw Ike Bauerin. I'm not sure whereabouts he was on the road, whether he's going back to the peloton, whether he's trying to bridge up to Carpenter and Jurado. Taking a look behind, and on some of these long straight roads towards the finish, you can see the convoy, you can see the peloton in the distance, and conversely the peloton will have a little carrot to chase as we head in towards the finish.
Thank you all of you for joining us for today's live coverage of the second stage of the Vuelta San Juan. We are doing our best to not only keep our eye on what is happening in the race, but also to keep our eye on the comments that you're leaving us both on YouTube and Facebook. We had a couple of comments and questions already coming in, so please feel free to ask anything that you would like for either me or John Bevan sat alongside me. One of those questions came in from Steve, who said, when World Tour teams put together their schedules, do they decide on certain events based on weather, distance from home, potential competition or lack of it, etc.? Well, there are a whole host of facts or considerations, shall I say, when it comes to planning out a rider's schedule and calendar for each and every race season. One of those will be where they're from. So if you've got an Argentinian in your lineup, you're likely to start him at the Vuelta San Juan Internacional, for example. If you've got Australians in your lineup, then it might well be that they'd like to go home over the winter and start their season at the Santos Tour Down Under. Beyond that, the big name riders, so in this scenario, the likes of Peter Sagan, Julian Alaphilippe, etc., will have a big say in what their schedule looks like for the year, because they're the big riders, they're the ones most likely to get the results. And if they say that they want to go and do a particular race, they're more than likely to be allowed to do so. Not always the case. Even if you're a big champion, sometimes a team will say, no, actually this is the programme that we would like you to do. We want you to focus this year on the Tour de France as opposed to the Giro d'Italia, or whatever that case may be. But in general, they will have a large say in their own programmes. Beyond that, of course, if you've got a race which favours sprinters, then not only will the sprinters go there, but also their key lead-out men. And the Classics riders suit a certain type of guy as well. So the Cobble Classics, you'll see the same riders pretty much week in, week out, because those are the types of races that favour them. But beyond that, it will just come down to who each team feels is best suited to each race, who their team leader is, and who is best placed to support them in their aims for that particular race.
It's also a case, and perhaps a more modern facet of modern cycling, is that now that the riders like Chris Froome, Egan Bernal can get in fantastic shape with seemingly much less race kilometres in comparison to other riders. And I suppose it's also personal differences that judge the race calendar. You can see the purple and green in the middle there. And we've also got Movistar towards the back here. Number 3, Elo Segui. They round this roundabout. Last 10 kilometres, 48 kilometres an hour. They are well ahead of schedule on the run into Pocito, which roughly translates as little well or little hole, which is based on an old legend of an old lady that used to find nuggets of gold from the little hole there.
You've been doing your research,
I've been
John,
doing my
since
research.
you woke up late this afternoon.
This is the sort of thing.
John's been having a well-earned sleep after his work over the last couple of weeks. We should probably focus a little bit more before we get into the closing stage of today's stage on the crash yesterday. Now it's hard to see exactly what happened at live speed when that crash happened. We showed it to you at the start of today's broadcast, but it was that fan at the side of the road who was applauding the riders basically, but in having his hands outstretched in front of him, he caught the hand, or shall I say the arms, of Brandon McNulty of UAE Team Emirates. That caused him to go offline. Although he didn't crash, it then caused a load of people to crash behind him. Now amongst those that went down, as we mentioned, Christophe Laporte, who fractured a wrist, so he's taking no further part in the race. But there were a number of other riders that were either hitting the deck or held up by that particular crash. Amongst them, the big favourite of the race, Remco Evenepoel, the 20-year-old phenomenon. He was in his first year as a senior last year and his first year as a professional rider. Took some huge wins along the way, including the Tour of Belgium, the stage race, the biggest one in Belgium, of course. Now, he was the big favourite, and he did lose time yesterday, 1 minute and 16 seconds, I think it was. But latterly, the organisers decided to give everybody involved in that crash the same time, despite the fact that it was outside 3 kilometres to go. Now, I've been reading up on this, and there's no real reason when you look at the UCI regulations for them to have been able to do that and make everybody on the same time. We saw something similar last year at the Tour of California, where TJ Van Garderen was in the leader's yellow jersey. He was held up behind a crash. He then tried to get back on and was held up behind another crash with more than 3 kilometres to go. And in the end, the organisers gave him the same time as the winner of that stage, and he held on to his yellow jersey. It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because it certainly wasn't the rider's fault, that crash yesterday. And so from my personal point of view, I'd say it's very fair that they were all given the same time. But that's not exactly what the rules state.
No, very much a case, certainly in the case of the Tour of California, quite a lot of outcry from other teams, a feeling of injustice. But I don't think the same can be said from yesterday's crash. Absolute freak incident, but unfortunately the intervention from the side of the road didn't stop yesterday. In fact, a dog ran into the middle of the road earlier in the stage and took out Daniel Juarez, the intermediate sprints classification leader, and it took them a little bit of a while to get back. And just goes to show it's a fantastic sport of cycling where everybody can go to the side of the road and are free to do so, but in some instances you have to wonder, can it be better regulated? And as well, the run into the finish, should it be barriered?
Well, how far do you barrier it?
Yeah.
As you said, a dog ran out onto the road at the very start of today's stage, and it's virtual impossibility to barrier a 168 kilometre stage from start to finish. So you just have to hope that the public that come out to watch on the road are sensible, and if they've got pets, they keep them either inside the house. But you get a lot of stray dogs in this part of the world. Certainly when I was down also in Portugal for a couple of training camps, there were a lot of dogs that would come out onto the road whilst you were training. You just had to be ever watchful for them. That's not something you can be when you're riding at 55 kilometres per hour trying to establish a breakaway, which is what was happening earlier on today at the start of stage 2 here. So it's a very difficult one to regulate from that point of view, but certainly there needs to be some thought put into the safety of these riders, because those types of crashes are happening now with alarming regularity. Still our 2 riders out front, they being Robin Carpenter of Rally Cycling in the orange kit, riding for America. And we've also got Christopher Robin Jurado riding for the Panama national team, just collecting a last bottle. Now normally you're not allowed to feed inside the last 20 kilometres, but the UCI do often make that different when the temperatures are high enough, which they are probably today, John. We were looking at the temperatures and they're in the region of 33 degrees centigrade, despite the fact that it is now, around about 8:30 I think in the evening over there, or 7:30.
Yeah, unbelievably balmy temperatures, and you could see the salt marks on Robin Carpenter's jersey. Just a visual representation of just how hard these guys are working, and the kind of heat. It's almost deceptive when the sun isn't shining. You presume it's kind of overcast and not particularly warm, but as you say, Dan, 34 degrees, and that is coming towards the evening as well.
I think the expected temperatures are part of the reason why the stages are quite late this year compared to previous years. Just to give the riders a little bit of respite from the soaring temperatures that you see in the middle of the day over here. So they'll be finishing quite late at night. Thankfully for them, their hotel is quite centrally located and not far from the start and finish of yesterday's stage and today's. Tomorrow though, John, we have got what should be the first big shake-up in the general classification. We are expecting this in 10 miles time to finish in a bunch sprint, but tomorrow we have the individual time trial, 15 kilometres in length, last year won by Julian Alaphilippe of De Koning Quickstep. Remco Evenepoel finished third there on the day before going on to finish 9th overall. But people are expecting big things of the young Belgian this year, despite the fact that he's only just 20. And to be honest, I think I am too, despite his crash yesterday.
Well, exactly. I think the justification as well, winner of the Classica San Sebastian as well. He's already got key races in his palmares, and at such a young age it's hard not to put the pressure on him in terms of expectation, and I think he himself will have high expectations for this race. He's brought a strong team with him here to Argentina, and he'll be looking to deliver even at this early stage of the season.
He's not short of confidence, is he? But if I had his results at his age, I'd be even more confident than he is.
I would be cockatoo.
Yeah. In fact, I remember reading an interview recently with Philippe Gilbert, who said that he felt that Remco was a little bit arrogant when he first met him, but as he got to know him more over the year, he realised that that confidence just stems from somebody that won every single race that he entered pretty much as a junior rider, including that incredible ride at the World Championships 1.5 years ago, where he was held up in a crash, had to have a change of wheels, set off with about a 3-minute deficit to the front of the race, and then basically on his own went all the way through all of the riders, got to the front group, attacked them and soloed to the finish. He was head and shoulders above the rest in the junior category, and the way he's going to be head and shoulders above the rest in the professional category too.
It's that swagger, it's that belief, it's that determination that enables you to make those sort of physical efforts. If you look at the likes of Mathieu van der Poel, the likes of Peter Sagan, they all have that kind of inner confidence, that will to win. And Remco certainly no different. Coming off the back here, rider just coming back from a puncture.
We've got some heated discussion going on in the comments, John. Steve says, Sagan was my guy for the sprint yesterday, but he was in a pretty good position in the last couple of 100 metres and managed to get boxed out of a bit in the sprint to the line. To which Buzzman responded saying, Sagan has gained too much weight to ever win again.
That's a little bit strong. I mean, looking at Sagan, it's not like he's ballooned. From a weight perspective, I suppose pro cyclists are a bit more sensitive than the rest of the population, but I definitely wouldn't rule out Peter Sagan. I was just thinking earlier, it's so odd to see him not in a world champion.
No,
or
hard to pick him out, or harder.
Slovakian champions jersey. Of course, he's still got those defining physical characteristics. He's still kept the beard as well.
Yeah. I mean, if Buzzman would like to put a wager on this, I'd quite happily go in and say that I think Peter Sagan probably will win another race at some point in his career, even if it's not here at the Vuelta San Juan. But it could well be today. He's certainly amongst the favourites to win today's stage 2. Also Rudy Barbier, who won yesterday. Now you'd imagine, John, that given his win yesterday, that Barbier will be the out-and-out leader for the Israel Startup Nation, because they have got other fast men that could potentially go for their own results today. Hugo Hofstetter, the other Frenchman on the team. Norman Vatra is also very fast, the Estonian rider, and the American Travis McCabe. But given that win, you'd expect them all to be amassing round
at the back
Barbier.
here.
Oh no, I hate seeing that in the gutter on the side.
Gutter. Oof, and he's holding his ribs there, and that's going to be very hard to get out of. And it just goes to show the pace is ramping up towards 50 kilometers an hour, and that was right towards the back of the bunch, right where you don't want to be. And look at that wheel, oh my goodness.
Rolled 2 tubs there. Tubs being tubular tyres that are effectively glued onto the rim. And you can see that rider requiring 2 new wheels to go into his frame, because he's broken both of his previous wheels and rolled both the tubs off them too. That was some serious braking he must have had to do to try and avoid the crash there. 12.4 kilometres to go, and that will go very quickly indeed with the speeds they're going right now. I would imagine in the next 14 minutes we'll see the winning ride across the line.
Some further looks behind from Carpenter and Urado as we see the aftermath of that. And it's Daniel Juarez, leader of the intermediate sprints classification, and he's waiting for mechanical assistance as the peloton continues to roll. And they're rolling at quite a rate now. Tom Bowley back on the front. Bora Hansgrohe and De Koning Quickstep also in attendance.
It's pretty incredible, John, isn't it, the work rate of these domestiques on the front. I mean, when you consider the fact that Bowley has been on the front most of yesterday and today, and given the average speeds that he and a couple of other riders on the front of the main peloton have been achieving, the fact that he can ramp things up with just 11.5 kilometres to go just goes to show how much power these guys have in reserve. He does look like he's done for the day now, the Swiss rider from UAE Team Emirates, which is leading Peter Seri from De Koning Quickstep up there on the front. But as you mentioned, John, things are ramping up seriously now, and that breakaway of 2 riders remaining out front, Urado and Carpenter, are soon to be reeled in.
You can see the discrepancies of speed there. Right, going at a not slow 55 kilometers an hour, but the bunch really ramping it up. You can see they are gaining ground by the second. And with 11 kilometers to go, this is the point in the race where your sprint lead-out teams will start to assemble towards the front.
And that is the break of the day done. 10.7 kilometres to go. Robin Carpenter and Christopher Robin Urado are caught by the main peloton, being led at the moment by Bora Hansgrohe and Pavel Polyansky. Peter Seri still up there in second place, about to do one of his final turns, you'd imagine, for De Koning Quickstep. The longer the turns they can give these domestiques, John, the more riders they can keep in reserve for that final lead out. That's very important when you've got a race like the Vuelta San Juan International, because there are only 6 rider teams. So if one of your teammates is a sprinter and you're trying to lead him out, the fewer riders you use at the front to control that breakaway and keep up the tempo, the more riders you're going to have left in reserve to do the final lead out in the last couple of Ks.
Yep, one of the many facets to the perfect sprint lead out train is resource management, as we see Juarez getting pace back to the bunch. 2 minutes and 21 down. He might not see the front of the race again, at least not until the finish.
And I don't think he'll be too worried about that, John, given the fact that he started the day 7 minutes and 3 seconds down. He was in the breakaway yesterday where he picked up the first of those intermediate sprints points. He's picked up plenty more today, so he should well be on the podium at the end of the day as the leader of that intermediate sprints classification, which he and his team, I'm sure, will be very pleased indeed about.
His day is done. These guys at the front, the real work is just beginning. See riders from behind. You can see rally cycling. Nope, sorry, that's Ascardi. I've made the mistake again. The orange of Ascardi coming up on the right hand side. Also see Movistar on the very far right hand side as well. Think they'll have interests in the sprint.
Yeah, Sebastian Mora was the rider that Marty was saying yesterday is their fast man at the Movistar squad. He wasn't up there in the sprint yesterday, but he might well have been held up with the others in that crash at 3.4 kilometres to go. But we think it will be him who will be going for the sprint for Movistar today. I do think it's going to be one of the big name riders today, John, that takes the win. I think Barbier had his chance yesterday. He took it very well indeed. As did Belletti, coming in second place. Very disappointed, smashing the handlebars as he crossed over the finish line yesterday. But I do think it will be the likes of Sagan, Gaviria or Hodge that are going to win today. In fact, I'm going for Hodge.
Interesting. Very interesting. I'd like to see Gaviria. He's we've talked about him earlier in the broadcast. I think it could be his time, rewarding the likes of Tom Bowley for their efforts today. And as you can see, the bum fight has started and the trains are working their way towards the front, fighting for every corner, every inch of road.
And ironically, a lot of the teams and riders will be thankful for these corners today. This is something I mentioned a couple of times on yesterday's stage, where there was a flat run-in for what seemed like the last 150 k's of the stage. Slight exaggeration there, but the finish and the final, 20 kilometres were almost dead straight on a very wide road. And what that means is that nobody's particularly fatigued unless they're riding on the front, because even at 55 kilometers per hour, it's not that hard to sit in the middle of a big peloton travelling at that pace. So it means that everyone behind is reasonably fresh, which in turn means that everyone has got the energy to move up when they wish to, which is what makes the racing so close and so chaotic, and the potential for crashes. Now, yesterday that crash was caused by a spectator, as we've gone over, but today they will be thankful for these roundabouts and corners, because it just means a slight deceleration and acceleration out the other side, which means that the group is more strung out, which makes it harder for riders towards the back to be able to make their way up towards the front, and so overall it's just a lot safer.
Team Puerto de Calles, with interest in the sprint as well, seemingly. Now we can see the white shoulders and the blue shorts of De Koenig Quickstep. Never far from the front, always vigilant. And we can see Danielos coming up, just a tap on his teammate's rear, saying he's there. And Sagan just on the back of that Bora Hansgrohe train as we round this roundabout. When is the point to go?
Well, as late as possible, pretty much, isn't it, these days? This is something which actually has changed a lot in lead-outs over the last decade or so. Around about 10 to 20 years ago, there were normally only one, maybe two teams that were interested in doing a full-blown lead-out for their sprinter, and all other sprinters and teams were just intent on getting them onto the right wheel at the right time. Now, though, every team and every sprinter wants to have a lead-out train, and that can make things very chaotic towards the end. And I think that that has increased the speed, which has therefore reduced the distance that a team is able to do a lead-out. You used to see them start from 5, maybe 6 kilometres to go in the past, but particularly here with those 6-man teams, you really can't afford to go full gas on the front, even with all your riders, until you get to at least 2 kilometres to go. So at the moment, everybody's just going to be trying to line themselves up in the right place, which is kind of second position, or as a second tier down the peloton, as opposed to right on the front, because if you're on the front now, you're going to run out of riders before you get to the last K.
Caleb Ewan in the Tour Down Under said many times that often his objectives of his teammate is just to get him into the right position, get him there within 1 or 2 kilometres, and then he'll do the rest. He'll surf the wheels, and that is a key skill of the modern day sprinter, being able to pick the right wheel. Almost half the battle. The rest of the battle is, of course, pumping out in excess of 1500 watts for...
Well, it's incredible that they can even do that, John, to be perfectly honest. I mean, especially on a slightly harder stage than today. The last 4 minutes or so, I would expect the average power of most of the rides up there to be in the region of 450 watts, which would put most people on their limit. So to then be able to get out of the saddle and produce, what, close to 2,000 watts in some cases, if you're Andre Greipel, 1,800 watts maybe if you're Sam Bennett, a lot less if you're Caleb Ewan, but he's so much smaller he doesn't need to produce as much power to go the same speed. But it really is incredible that they get into that position with such regularity, because it is an incredible art. It's very dangerous. So to be there with that consistency is remarkable. And part of being a sprinter, as you said, there's a lot of people out there who are able to produce some humongous watts in a sprint, but either they're too tired when they get there, or they can't get themselves into the right position with 200 metres to go. And if you're 50 riders back, doesn't matter how much power you've got, you're not going to win a bike race if you're there with 200 metres to go.
No. What's making me wince is the road furniture that was in the middle of the road there. They've not sectioned off this wide section of road. All of the tarmac available to them, and those bollards in the middle. Of course, there will be some signalling from the riders in front to say that these obstacles are coming. But if you need to change position, you have to do it fast. Oh my goodness me!
I've got my heart in my mouth here. Can everybody just get over to the right?
Yeah, I think we just need to... there needs to be a consensus. There's just a handful of riders on the left side of the road. But
yeah, you would have thought that the organisers would have kept them to one side of the road or the other, so that they're not having to dodge through these bollards here at the moment. So it looks like they're all safely through that particular point, but here are some more coming now. Most of the peloton over towards the right-hand side of the road. We can see that purple and green of Bardiani CSF Faisani coming up on the right-hand side of the road now. Marco Benfato, we think, is their sprint. You can see him at the bottom of your screen with number 71 on his back. He's the Bardiani fast man riding for them and for Italy. Just next to Daniel Oss, who still has himself with number 14 Oscar Gatto behind him, who appears to be the last lead-out man for Peter Sagan today. You went for Gaviria, John, didn't you?
Yes.
3 kilometres to go to find out who's going to win today's stage 2. We can see the leader's white jersey with the blue checkered flag on the right hand side, with elbows right out, trying to defend his position up there towards the front. Israel Startup Nation, as we mentioned, they're going to be full of confidence after yesterday's big result, and they'll be doing their best to lead out Rudy Barbier to a second consecutive victory.
Manuel Belletti, well positioned towards the front on his Androni train.
Oh,
and a little bit of a push and a shove from Daniel Oss there.
Well, it'll be interesting to see whether he gets reprimanded for that. A use of some shoulder or a bit of elbow, as long as you've got your hands on the bars, is often, often a blind eye has turned to that. But as soon as you take your hands off the bars and use them to push another rider, well, often that's not seen in quite the same light. So let's wait and see what the commissaires decide later on this evening. 2.2 kilometres to go. Almost looks like a slight rise here, John.
Yeah. Could play into the hands of some of the punchier, climbia sprinters in the bunch. At the minute it's Flores and Bodnar, shoulder to shoulder. Still some remonstrating going on from the Bora Hansgrohe man.
You can see Hodge, number 33, is right in the middle of the pack at the moment. He is surrounded by a couple of Deceuninck Quick-Step teammates, amongst them Zdeněk Stybar, the rider from the Czech Republic. But he's going to have to find a way, or at least his teammates are, of breaking out from the middle of the bunch fairly soon. Otherwise he's going to be stuck where he is.
At the moment it's still Androni on the front. Elbows out, and they are really pushing hard now. You can see the effort on the faces of these lead-out men. It looks almost too easy, but that is the nature of professional sport.
Well, you can see on the left-hand side of the road, around about 8 back from the front, is Julian Alaphilippe in the white and blue of the Deceuninck Quick-Step. He's constantly looking around, constantly trying to see where his teammates are and trying to get them out. And finally they're there. And now Alaphilippe starts to make his way up towards the front with Zdeněk Stybar on his wheel. Also up there for Deceuninck Quick-Step is the Belgian Bert van Leeuwenberger. And finally, in that lineup and in that lead-out, is their main sprinter, Jose Alvaro Hodge.
Well, Hodge hasn't been able to get out. He had a tap on a Cofidis rider's shoulder as they just pass inside the final kilometre. And here, out of the saddle, comes Alaphilippe, bringing them towards the line. And now it's now or nothing. We've got some attacks from the right-hand side here.
Well, Hodge is now on the back wheel of Peter Sagan. They are in a region of 10th and 11th position at the moment. Still in the region of 600 or 700 metres to go. Hodge has now found his way back up to his teammate Leeuwenberger's wheel. The lead out in full flow now. Zdeněk Stybar peels off to the left-hand side of your screen, and it's leaving Daniel Oss to do the final lead-out duty for Peter Sagan, who's 2 off his wheel. On the left-hand side, we have Deceuninck Quick-Step, Leeuwenberger doing his best to lead out Hodge, but Hodge has been blocked in much further down. Gaviria kicks on the left-hand side of your screen, John, and it looks like Fernando Gaviria, your pick for the win, has taken it.
There we go. Fernando Gaviria coming through at just the right time. And a perfect way to start his season. He'll be absolutely delighted with that. Banging the bars in delight. Fantastic teamwork all round from UAE Team Emirates. Not a particularly prominent lead-out train in the finish, but he picked the right wheel. High fives all round from the Colombian.
Well, I think earlier on in the stage, John, I was saying that Fernando Gaviria just didn't look like he had it yesterday. Not on great form. He has certainly proved me wrong today by taking that win. It was a bit messy in the sprint, though, wasn't it? My eyes were on Hodge because he was my pick for the win, as I wasn't really looking at anything else. He would have won had he not got boxed in with around about 500 metres to go. But a great win for Fernando Gaviria there. And I did mention yesterday that I do think he's going to be out for redemption today. This year, should I say, after what was a lacklustre season by his standards back in 2019. And as you've just said, John, he's got his season off to the best possible start. That will fill him and his team with confidence for the rest of the year.
Yeah, It'd be fantastic to see a replay soon, just to see how that sprint unfolded from the air. Time will tell to see if he takes the overall as well. Presumably he might. On count back. Although Barbier looked like he was well up there in the sprint as well. So it's highly plausible that he'll keep that overall leader's jersey for another day.
I've got him in my Pro Cycling Stats fantasy team as well, John.
Wow.
So that's some prize money in the bank for Lloydie.
How are you doing so far, Dan?
Well, at last look, which was last night, I was lying in around about 258th position.
Out of?
260. No, I'm not entirely sure. I should refresh and I'll keep you updated on how my fantasy team's going. If you're in the comments and you're doing the Pro Cycling game, as it's called from Pro Cycling Stats, I'd love to hear how you're getting on. It's like a stocks and shares system. I'll get onto that later. We'll just have a quick look at the overhead shots from this final kilometre of the race. So where is Gaviria at the moment, John? Out of the screen, so he came from a long way back as well.
Yep, it looks like Alaphilippe coming out of the saddle here.
Still not in there.
And we were waiting for him. Here he is, just at the bottom of your screen, just in front of the Iscardi rider there. Whoa. Let's just watch what he does here. Playing a long waiting game.
Well, at this point, he's on the wheel of Hodge, just in front of him. So he's in the middle of your screen right now, just on the wheel of Peter Sagan. So he's in the white jersey with the red stripe across it. Keep your eye on Fernando Gaviria. He's trying to decide which way to go. He has to do a little bit of feathering of the brakes just there, as does Sagan. But when Sagan goes, oh, he's all over the place, in fact.
Very messy sprint once again. But Gaviria spotting the gap on the right-hand side, just to the right of Rudy Barbier, who's still doing that seated sprint. Incredible. But Gaviria hitting the wind quite early, in fact. And powering away to the finish. That is raw power there from Fernando Gaviria. He didn't have a wheel for a good couple 100 meters there. And taking a fantastic win. Looks like second place might be Marco Banfato.
Yeah, I think Banfato was third. I have to say I don't know who that rider is in the yellow and red there who finished second, but we will have that graphic up fairly soon, I'm sure, with the top 10.
Sagan also up there, Barbier. It looks like sixth place. So he should retain the overall leader's jersey. Not quite a stop frame photo finish. Bit of motion blur on there. But anyway.
Well, I think that slow motion overhead shot, John, shows just how hectic these sprints are. Especially when you focus only on one rider and see the choices that they had to make in a split second of whether to go left or right or brake or take their chances and go through a gap that might not exist. And that's exactly what Fernando Gaviria did then. There was one point where he was looking to go to the right and at the last minute decided to go left. He did have to feather the brakes then, but when Sagan went, he found the space down the right-hand side of the road. And as you've just said, it was then raw power that took him all the way from there to the finish line. So a well-deserved win. That wasn't by chance. That wasn't fluky positioning. That was just sheer sprint power over the last 150 metres of the stage. And you can see just how much that win meant to him.
Very easy to get tunnel vision in the final sprint, but you could see from that aerial shot the presence of mind to keep his head up. And in the end, it was the right decision. He could have gone left, got a bit more shelter, but he might have got boxed in once again. We are in the finish in Pocito. Reasonably short transfer back to the hotel, I believe.
Well, they're not actually too far away at all from San Juan, about 25 kilometres to the south of San Juan. In fact, they did a loop around San Juan on today's stage, in fact. There is Daniel Juarez, who should, as we said, be visiting the podium again, retaining that lead in the intermediate sprints classification, being given the checkered flag as he crosses the line.
It's nice that every group gets a flag, not just the winner. Has to be quite quick on the draw with that flag. Here's your top 10. Fernando Gaviria taking the win from Naranjo of the very
brilliant result for him.
Convoluted Agrupación Virgen de Fatima saddle drunk team. Banfato in third, Alejat and Sagan rounding out 5th place. And Fernando Gaviria does take over the general classification. I'm trying to do the maths, Dan, based on count back.
Oh, I see. Well, where did Fernando Gaviria finish yesterday? 9th. So where did Barbier finish on today's stage? Presumably outside of 9th.
There we go.
So Fernando Gaviria will begin tomorrow's stage 3 individual time trial in that white and blue leaders skin suit, as it will be tomorrow for that time trial stage. A reminder that it is 15 kilometres in length and that the big favourite to take the win is Remco Evenepoel. We believe that, like last year, they will be doing that time trial on road bikes, something which races like the Vuelta San Juan often do, so that the teams don't have to bring over a whole host of time trial bikes as well as all their road bikes. It just makes things a bit easier, and it also evens up the playing field a bit for the smaller teams at these races that might not necessarily have time trial bikes at their disposal. Welcome back to the set. Hope you enjoyed stage 2 of the Vuelta a San Juan. I've just been looking up Nicolas Javier Naranjo, who was second on today's stage. I would say that is probably one of the biggest results of his career to come second behind Fernando Gaviria, although he has taken 6 stages of the Vuelta Ciclista del Uruguay. And he was second at the National Championships road race of Argentina last year, so he's a decent rider. 29 years of age, though, might be a little bit late for him to step up to the World Tour, even with results like that, John.
Yeah, possibly. We're going to take a look at the highlights now of a fantastic stage 2. And here's the very start of the day where the breakaway was formed. It contained Velardes and Daniel Juarez in the intermediate sprints jersey. Christopher Juaro of the Panama team, Robin Carpenter of Rally Cycling, Royner Navarro and Robinson Ruiz of Peru, Igabarin of Fundación Orbea, and Francisco Montes of the Argentinian national team. And this is the point where a crash caused by a stray dog took down the breakaway, including Juarez. Fortunately, they could get back on their bikes and re-establish that breakaway. As we see Peter Sagan, who had ideas and intentions on the final sprint. Here's the intermediate sprint, which was taken by Juarez. He adds 3 more points to his tally in the intermediate sprints competition. At this point, the writing was pretty much on the wall for the breakaway. Robin Carpenter drawing clear, and we also had Christopher Jurado joining him. Those two would stay out. They would dangle in front of the bunch for a good 20 kilometers or so. A crash at the back here, forcing riders into the gutter right at the back. Unlike yesterday, not quite as big a crash. But here we are. The writing on the wall for our leading duo, who were the last to be caught, pretty much with about 10 kilometers to go, pretty much as the sprint teams would have predicted it. And in the final sprint, it was another messy one, Dan.
It was another messy one. It was De Koning Quicks. There were 2 riders on the front with 1 kilometre to go. But they'd lost their last lead-out man, and indeed the rider that they were leading out, Hodge. He did manage to make his way out briefly, but then got boxed in again just here on the bottom left-hand side of your screen. Not boxed in, though. Managing to find clear daylight in front of him was Fernando Gaviria of UAE Team Emirates. He launched his sprint with a little under 200 metres to go, and nobody was able to get close to him. Brilliant win for the Colombian. Anyway, as I mentioned, didn't have the best of seasons in 2019, but he's got his 2020 season off to the best possible start. Second race in, first win of the year for the Colombian. And with that stage win, Fernando Gaviria also takes the overall lead in the Vuelta a San Juan after 2 stages. Rudy Barbier on the same time, but relegated to second in the GC. courtesy of the overall positions aggregate from the first 2 days of racing. Manuel Belletti of Androni Giocattoli now sitting in third place, so they will be the last 3 riders off the start ramp for tomorrow's individual time trial. Before we go, John, your bet for tomorrow's individual time trial? Put you on the spot here. Whilst you think, I'm going to have a look at the start list, see if there's any strong time trialists here.
Well, if you're going to put me on the spot, it's got to be a rider from Duquesne Quick-Step. I'm going Julien Alaphilippe, potentially. Considering his time trial heroics at the Tour de France, I can't look past him.
Well, he also won the time trial here in San Juan last year, and Remco Evenepoel was third. But I'm not going for either of them.
Oh, really?
It's a toss-up for me between Brandon McNulty and Mathieu Bodnar, but I'm going to go for Bodnar of Bora Hansgrohe. He's in the latter part of his career now, but has always been a strong time trialist. Hasn't had to do too much work on the front for Peter Sagan over the first couple of stages, so I think he'll be gunning for tomorrow's individual time trial, and I'm pretty confident he's going to take it now.
I must point out a comment. Forgive me, I didn't catch the name, but the headline for today: Gaviria finds gold in Pocito.
Oh, nice.
After the golden nuggets. They've been listening to the commentary.
Could you write our scripts for us, please? I mean, we didn't have a script for today, as you could probably tell, but if you'd like to help us out with some other scripts, that would be very much appreciated. Right, I think we'll bid you all farewell from today's second stage of the Vuelta at San Juan. Very much appreciated having your company. Very much appreciated having John Chockley's voice Bevan making his commentary debut in a live race, and he'll be back with me tomorrow?
Yep, hopefully with a bit more sleep after the Tour Down Under.
Yeah.
So we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Well, if he's that good without sleep, imagine what he's going to be like after a few winks. Anyway, we'll be back at the same time tomorrow, which is 10 p.m. GMT, so work out what that will be wherever you are in the world. It'd be great if you could join us. It would also be great if you could tell your cycling friends that we've got live coverage of this race worldwide, except for Latin America and Europe. The more viewers we get, the more races we're likely to be able to show you in the future, and we have absolutely loved bringing you the racing so far in the 2020 season. Anyway, from me and John, it's goodbye. See you tomorrow.